Prefab homes, both entrances, both streets are blocked off at the bottom of the, thing and at the top. So one of the trucks that's helping moved, and we snuck up through the street anyway. They were looking at us like we were crazy too. But otherwise, there's no way to get in. No way to get in here.
You did finally seal off that back entrance. You did seal off that back entrance.
Well, we were going to try to come up the back entrance to Hartwood, but they're putting in a house down there too, and they have that street blocked off. So thank you so much. I'm sorry that we were late. They're putting in a couple of mobile homes at both ends of at the streets at both ends of our compound, and we had a little difficulty getting in. We'll open with incense burning, opening of the gata. And do you have a Namo Tassa? I don't have my phone.
The old version?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. The one that we listened to the other day.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Can you just go ahead?
Start with Shakyamuni.
Let's no, we're not gonna do Sakyamuni. We're gonna do that gata in place of Sakyamuni. I mean that sadhana in place. And we'll start with incense burning. So we won't see Sommerberg for a couple of weeks. I call her Sommerberg. Venerable Soma. She's going to Portugal. It was on her bucket list a few years ago. I'm just telling all your business. She was going a few years ago. So she was telling me last time, I don't want to go. I'm here. My heart tells girl, you better take that trip to Portugal. It might not be here much longer the way things are going. But yeah, good miss you. Incense burning, all space is filled with the fragrance. All Buddhas smell it from afar. Auspicious clouds gather everywhere. With utmost sincerity, all Buddhas are here. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. bodhisattvas. We pay homage, we offer clouds of incense to the bodhisattvas and the mahasattvas. This can be a little bit abbreviated, you know.
Yeah.
So that was a blast from the past. I don't think we've sung that song for 3 years. 3 years. Yeah, maybe even before that. So we're on transcending hesitation, and in verse 8, Shantideva gives 3 examples of how Bodhisattva might manifest. He could manifest as a doctor, as a nurse, or as medicine is itself. His aspiration is not only to help people who are physically ill, but to help those who suffer from the sickness of craving, of aggression, of ignorance. And thus, he longs to help with material things, such as medicine, food, and drink, and to bring benefit at the deeper level of spiritual nourishment. The main point is not to hold back for fear of ending up with nothing yourself. For sentient beings, poor and destitute, may I become a treasure, ever plentiful, and lie before them closely in their reach, a varied source of all they might need. Here Shantideva dedicates his merit to the poor and the destitute. Again, so we see both the material offering of oneself as well as on a spiritual level. In the story of the great Indian Buddhist master Naropa, his teacher Tilopa appeared to him in the form of a maggot-ridden dog. And feeling disgusted, Naropa tried to jump over the dog and run away. And immediately the dog changed into Naropa, who said, if you have aversion for sentient beings, how do you ever expect to awaken from the samsaric mind. Anything that awakens our compassion or wisdom then serves as a bodhisattva. Bring me one of those pillows so I can sit on. Thus, my body thus, and all my goods besides, and all my merits gained and to be gained, I give them away, withholding nothing, to bring about the benefit of living beings. There's a song we sing, I surrender all to you. Everything I have, I give to you, withholding nothing. So sometimes people talk about being a bodhisattva, but the path of the bodhisattva, or the state of bodhisattvahood, is all in. That's the point that I'm trying to make. It's all in, withholding nothing. Whenever one thinks of themselves in the process, they have you can know that you're not in the right state of mind. You can know you're not in the bodhisattva state. And I'm not saying then that everybody just gives everything away, because there is the co-arising of both wisdom and compassion. And without one or the other, if you're lacking one or the other, you're gonna go sideways, and you're gonna go down. And sometimes people start thinking in their own egoic mind about, well, I need this for myself, I need this for my family, I need this, and I'm not just talking about lay people. I'm talking about all people. I mean, sometimes when I'm thinking about something that needs to be taken care of here, and I find out there's a need somewhere, I quickly move to address it, because if I start thinking, I'm like, well, we need it too, and so whatever's my first rising impulse, I try to act out of that. And that's a good way that you can do it. Of course, you're in a place that you are cultivating and developing discernment. And so you can trust your judgment, you can trust your instincts. But if you're in a place where you're surrounded by people who have a lot of selfish ambitions or selfish goals, or they're lazy, or they're more concerned about themselves than others, you can tell by what they talk about, then that's where you have to be particularly careful, because you slip off the path and you don't even know that you slipped off the path. And so as you look at some of these masters in the Tibetan tradition, you have Marpa, you have Naropa, you have Talopa, you have who does the songs, the 100,000 songs, Milarepa. Most of them attain that level through a lot of sacrifice and through a lot of suffering. Let's see, how can I say this? It's one of the drawbacks of, I think I'm speaking as a Theravadan monastic now. It's one of the drawbacks in how we understand and how we walk out the monastic life, because we can get very self-centered, because we sort of act as if the best way we can help people attain, or for the world to get better, is for us to subdue our own demons. And that's really true. You know, like if they tell you in an airplane, you know, like if the face masks fall and you have a child, put yours on first and then help the child. And that's true, we should do that. But I remember when I had a deep awakening. I was with a monk and I was studying with him. And he was telling the story about how he would walk by this old lady's house, and the house was falling down first, you know, like, you know, one post, you know, was crooked, and then he came by the next week and that post had completely fallen off, and he came by the next week and now the whole roof of the porch was collapsing, and he came by a couple of weeks later and that had collapsed. And he said, every time I went by, I prayed that somebody come along and help that poor lady. I said, well, what was wrong with you? He said, oh, we don't do that. You know? And he and I had many late night conversations around what he thought was the duty and responsibility of a monastic, which was to get their own enlightenment. And since that time, I've run into many monastics who feel that way. But I'm so happy that the revolution was not televised, and many women have entered into the ranks of the Theravada community, and we are restoring the heart of the practice. Sometimes we think that the Buddha did not talk about the Bodhisattva in his original teachings. We say that was a later convention, but he did all the time. As a matter of fact, he said that's how he got to be a Buddha. He would say, while I was yet an unenlightened Bodhisattva, I this or I that, an awakened being in the making. And it takes something for you to attain the fruit. And so when we think about how we understand the path in the West, one of the biggest things is that we think we should be just off meditating all the time. But that's not exactly the way the Buddha explained it, you know, because we don't sleep most of our day and do a little bit of work. We work during the day and we rest to revive ourselves, right, at night, to get up and work again the next day. And spiritual work is the same way. So our Buddha master says that 85 to 90% of our work is done off the pillow. Then when we sit on the pillow, we don't have to sit for hours and hours and hours. We can quickly enter in. So that's the quick path. I'll read Sutta number 8, I think, in the Majjhima Nikaya. And there he differentiates between it's called effacement. He differentiates between what practice is. You know, we think practice is meditation, but he said, I just call meditation a pleasant abiding. The practice takes place off the pillow. Now, other places he does call meditation practice, but I like this particular sutta because it's it starts to put it into perspective. And so if you look at some monastics, like over in Taiwan, in China, in Korea, they have truly benefited society. And they're the bhikkhunis there, they're called bhikshuni there. I visited with one of my masters in China, and she had a school with 5,000 kids. The school was the size of a city. I'd never seen anything like it. And then, she said, oh, and we make milk for the people, in the city too. And so I thought it was like a little dairy farm. She had a huge dairy complex, with all the latest, mega factory equipment. And then they went and showed, they were taking me on a tour of all of their work. They did the recycling for the city because the government wasn't paying for this. They had this huge recycling center. And the people who lived there would come out every day. They just rotate in shifts. They didn't get paid. It was to get the garbage off the street. So the whole community was, vested in the endeavors. And I was overwhelmed by just the generosity and the care and the interest of every villager. Like, this is my village. And they worked in all of those places, for free, so that everybody in the village was, their needs were taken care of. And that to me is an example I can see of how we benefit the society. And so I think we've missed something somewhere. And actually, I really had a falling out with that monk about that, because he told me I had wrong view. It's not our job to help people. According to Patrul Rinpoche, the easiest thing to relinquish is our possessions. We know how hard that can be. Giving up attachments to our bodies, however, is even more challenging. And the most difficult thing to give up is our merit. Can you imagine willingly letting go of all your good fortune? And good fortune is more than money. Good fortune is good health. It's friends and friendship. Good fortune is anything that comes in our life that's advantageous, and so when we talk about withholding nothing, that's where we're going. I mean, there's no way one can have renunciation, true renunciation, according to the Buddhist teachings, because the purpose of renunciation, I mean, one does not even cultivate renunciation until he sees the danger in samsara and being stuck on the wheel of grasping and craving. And when you can see that it's really a trap, I mean, you have to really see it though, because if you don't see it, it's no way to even get started. And we don't think that the things that we don't want are a trap, it's the things that we do want. It's the people that we do want in our lives. It's the joys and the pleasures that we do want. And the mind starts right away with what's wrong with. That's when that tag pops up in your head, that's where the way that one steps onto this path is not challenging with the ordinary, what's wrong with mine, but to really embrace the notion, like, baby, you can't think like that, that you're willing to give up everything, withholding nothing. Doesn't mean you are in that space right now, but it's not closing the door towards that being a sublime state, um, because that's the only way you get to it. Otherwise, we'll go with our excuses, thinking something's going to be taken from us. So the relief, is not that everything is taken from you and you're destitute with nothing. The relief is thinking that you'll suffer loss. You see, that's the attitude that he's trying to work on, because that's what causes our fear. That's what causes our grasping. It's thinking that I have to give this up, or I have to give that up. So it's really working on the mind that grasps, that craves, that clings, that does not consider another equal to oneself. Self and others are equal bodhicitta. That's a mind thinking self and others are equal. When I used to have foster children, and that's my children were perplexed in the beginning, because I'd go and get our foster kids things and then I didn't get them anything, and they would be upset, and they said, "Well, Mom, like, are we your children?" I said, "Yes, but I've always given you things. These kids never had anything." And they, began to, even when they were young, their hearts began to shift, and until they felt like I was everybody's mother. And then they were content again. But as long as the mind felt like they were being denied, it didn't have to be true. They had everything they needed, and almost everything they wanted. So it wasn't that they were actually being denied, but the mental suffering came in them thinking that they were being denied. And so I worked with my children while they were young to drive that notion out of them, and it saved them to this day. And I tell you, I used to worry a little bit about my son, because I just live in America, and but I've never had to worry. Now he's an old man, he's 50, so I don't worry about him anymore. Now, of course, I don't know. He had such a wonderful disposition. And even though in our young days we lived in a really bad neighborhood in DC, and but he never got into any trouble. He never thought, "Oh, I'll just go sell some drugs and make some money, because I want a flashy car. He never thought about any of those things. And my children had children, and my grandsons never thought about what he could take or what he didn't have, but he lived a life. They all lived lives of helping and constantly giving, And even though I haven't been there to have a life with them, their general heart is even to release their grandmother and their mother and give me to the world. The benefits, I tell you, there are benefits in doing these practices. They become a protection for you in doing these practices. And some people say, "Where are your children? Or don't you miss your grandchildren?" Or whatever. They're closer than my breath. Yeah, I never miss them, because they're always right here. They're right here. They're right here. But But the thing is, they know that they're right here. So a lot of times people come to me for counseling and they're 90 and their children are 75, and they still, wanting to control their children. They're wanting to like fix things with their children. They want, and so the very thing that they had, that they grasped, that they held on to, they end up losing them. They end up losing them to things. They lose them to bad people. They lose them to drugs. They lose them. The greatest gift I can do is to give myself away and then teach them how to do the same thing. Nirvana is attained by giving all. Nirvana, the object of my striving. Everything, therefore, must be abandoned, and it is best to give it all to others. Now, I'm trying to read this section with you so everybody won't want to put the book away. That's why I'm like trying to explain that this is working on the mind, so that the mind is peaceful and at ease, that the mind abandons its selfishness. So the one who suffers the most in selfishness is the one who is selfish, because no amount is enough. Never find any peace. I mean, again, I'm not saying you have to give everything away. That's not what I'm saying. But what he's asking you to give away is that deep care and concern for oneself above all others. That deep care and concern for one's own, like my children, my husband, my family above all others. And you enter into a spaciousness and a peace, and also an interconnectedness. You start feeling connected to anybody you meet. Anybody. So with these words, Shanti Deva summarizes the essence of verse 11. If liberation is what we want, we'll need to let go of everything. No holding something back for a rainy day. And this is probably the hardest message for any of us to hear. Oh, but we love our bodies the most. So he says, this body I have given up to serve the pleasure of all beings. Let them kill and beat and slander it and do to it whatever they desire. And though they treat it like a toy or make of it the butt of every mockery, my body has been given up to them. There's no use now to make so much. Twitter is all abuzz over the Academy Awards. The Chris Rock. What's his name? Chris Rock?
Will Smith and Chris Rock.
Yeah, Chris Rock made a tasteless joke, and Will Smith went up on stage and slapped him and cursed him out. But I hurt so bad for them because this kind of self-grasping makes you violent and makes you act a fool, makes you lose all your sense of decency. And there was a lot going on with that. There was more than just that incident. The Smiths have been in the news a lot around infidelity and a lot of things. So the Twitter was all blamed. Yeah, well, he didn't hit August. That's who he really wanted to hit. And it just brought more dirt out. Stories. But so it was very, very unfortunate. And that's why we have to develop a capacity to overlook a slight and to tolerate a fault. I'm not saying it didn't need to be handled. It just didn't need to be handled that way. It didn't need to be handled with violence and physical aggression. So being on the side where name calling could be what you were subjected to all your life, being in a hostile place. You know, I can tell you that words sometimes last a lot longer than a slap. That being called certain things wounds you deep inside. So I'm not saying that just physical violence was what was wrong with the other night, but I am saying that these things that they teach us that we think are for other people, you know, like what's in it for me? Actually, these things are for us. The giving up is for us so that we learn how to go through life with a mind that's at ease in every situation. Whether somebody's calling you names, whether somebody steals something from you, whether, it gives you a capacity to live life in a hostile world and still be at peace. So if we think of all of these teachings as something of the benefit for us, we will begin to see the benefit. Actually, we don't see the benefit. That's why the sages have to come and teach us these things, So the eyes that don't see a benefit are not going to be the eyes that see a benefit. We have to put something else into the mind so that the mind starts inclining in a different way. And the way the mind inclines is our reality, is the way we see things. And that's how patience develops. When I was a Christian, I wanted all the virtues except for patience because the Bible said that came with tribulation. I go, oh no, I don't want that. Like, I got enough suffering going on. I don't want that. But when I got on this path, I found there's no way out. Have to go through that door. You have to go through that door. And it's just like learning how to walk. At first, your legs are unsteady. You get up like a baby, take a few steps, plop down. But what does the baby do? The baby doesn't cry. The baby giggles, hits the floor, and gets up again. He goes again and plops down, and he keeps going until he's like that. Yeah. But else, if we get a slap down, we through with it. I tried to be nice to him, but you just can't be nice to some folks. That's where we are with it. But he said, if we're like this, harmless in our mind, then we have a great fortitude and capacity to overcome every slight and thereby break every fetter in our life. What if you thought that no one had any thought of harming you? What if you thought that everyone cared for you and wanted to help you? What if we thought this way? How different we would see the world. The same world. See somebody coming up the street, eyes on them. Yeah. Because we think, I want to clutch my handbag a little tighter. But what if we thought everyone loved us? It's just as easy to think that as to think that everyone hates you or after you, something from you or whatever. And the thing is that if we believe that good had any power, even the ones that do hate us, one or two things, is that we make an enemy into a friend, or we'd abide peacefully and just leave them with that mind. We have to believe that goodness has a benefit, or we won't embark on that path if we don't think it has a benefit. And the thing is that it can put us into such a state of ease and relaxation, that it opens the door for all of its spiritual friends to come along. When you open wide that door, all those friends come into your house, your home being your body and your mind, right? This is the house of your consciousness. And then you have plenty good room in there. Nothing seems like a chore. When something tough comes along, you don't see it so much as an obstacle. It might be a challenge, but not so much as an obstacle. And then you can say it doesn't matter whether you win or lose, but how you play the game. But you can't say that before then, because it does matter how you play the game. That's just that paradox. You got to know when to use that saying and when not. When one has some attainment, then one can say, oh, it doesn't matter whether you win or lose. It's how you play the game. If one has no attainment, it matters. Get some attainment first. Win. Almost every single teaching of the Buddha could be approached from two different sides. And that's why so often we're confused and perplexed, because we have this unenlightened mind and it reads something and it doesn't speak to us in a healthy way, because there can be a time when that's a statement of truth. It's just we don't know when it's that time in our unenlightened state. But once one begins to wake up, then they know when to use it this way and when to use it this way. So don't be afraid that the wisdom won't be there if the compassion and the generosity is there, because they are buddies. They travel together. And so Pema Chodron said, when I first read these verses, I was appalled. I didn't want to consider going this far, nor did I feel like it was wise to do so. From a Western perspective, this advice seems to feed right into the self-loathing so prevalent in our culture. But knowing that Shanti Deva's intention is always to support and encourage us, I looked past my initial aversion and discovered the wisdom of his words. This, I realized, was the approach of the civil rights workers in order to benefit not only African Americans, but also their oppressors. They were willing to put their bodies and feelings on the line. For the greater good, they entered into dangerous situations. Being the butt of every mockery was the least of it. They knew they would be beaten, insulted, and perhaps killed. This is an example of Bodhisattva wisdom and courage. Yet these were just ordinary people who had given birth to the Bodhi heart. And these verses describe what many famous bodhisattvas were willing to go through. It also describes the bravery of countless unsung heroes and heroines. So let beings do to me whatever does not bring them injury. Whenever they catch sight of me, let this not fail to bring them benefit. When someone beats or mocks us, they're not exactly strengthening our healthy patterns from a bodhisattva's point of view. They're harming themselves more than us. Therefore, Shanti David says that sentient beings can do anything to him as long as it doesn't result in their own injury. There's a story of a Tibetan monk who wept when he remembered how the Chinese had tortured him in prison. His listeners, of course, assumed that the reason for his tears was the memory of his personal trauma. However, he wasn't crying for himself. He was crying for the Chinese, who, as a result of their cruelty, would reap such intense suffering in the future. If we could maintain this long-range perspective, it wouldn't be so difficult for us to wish for our oppressors to stop creating their own pain and suffering. Now, this approach takes some cultivating, right? But if we work with it, we will sow seeds of happiness for both ourselves and others. So all the thoughts and actions of others towards me, even negative ones, can create a positive connection between us, one that will bring both of us benefit now and in the future. So sometimes, when you're doing this, you will be put to the test, you will be sorely tested. And you can, a good practice to take is to recognize that it is your test. It's not somebody else's test. If somebody wants to use you and take advantage of you, that's not their test. If they're in a state of ignorance, that's your test, because you said you're the one who knows and sees and understands. So maybe it means then that when someone's taking advantage of you, they think they're getting over, but you know that you're freely giving. You're freely giving it. And if you don't, then you'll be crying, how long, oh Lord, do I tolerate these infidels? That's, and you'll just be destroying all the work, all the good works that you're doing. So it is about not just doing, but doing with an honest and genuine attitude of doing. Otherwise, you're going to suffer for nothing, because you get nothing from it. It's only when you're allowing that would-be suffering to be a catalyst, for your growth on the path. May I be a guard for those who are protectorless, a guide for those who journey on the road, for those who wish to go across the water. May I be a boat. May I be a raft. May I be a bridge. And so this, we don't just inherit the bodhisattva badge of courage. You see, we actually have to. We create it. We make it so by how we shift our mind and hold the circumstances and the situations. May I be a guard for those who are protectorless. So somebody's doing something out of self-preservation, say, and all you can see is what they're doing to you, or they're taking something. Why not say, I freely give it? I understand that mind. I understand that mind of need and the fear if they don't have something or if they need something. So if I don't have that mind, then I'm participating in the non-well-being of the other person and myself. But if I cultivate this mind, I will be a boat, a raft, a bridge for those who need to go from this place of lack to a place of enjoyment or prosperity. I lay myself down. Then we are creating the causes and the conditions for that person's deliverance with our own mind. It says mind is chief. Mind made, or whatever we think and ponder on becomes the way the mind inclines, and it becomes the map of our reality. So we actually have the capacity to change reality for them. And so you go and you give until and unless the giving harms them. Not if it harms you, but if it harms them. Anybody got any questions about this? These are tough sayings now. Any yeah buts? We can have this conversation, right? Because this is like the back of the book, right? This is the top end of the practice, right? So I can have these kinds of conversations if you were baby Buddhists. Like Pop might be saying, I don't get it, I don't know what they're talking about. I'm not sure I'm coming back. But yes, I know you get it. Yeah. Because his master, Jesus, that's what he taught. He said, man, take your coat, give me your coat too. Right? But those sayings are too hard. That's why people like to revert to the Old Testament. Eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. They call themselves Christians, but it's not by what you call yourself. It's by virtue of your thoughts and your speech and your action. May I be an owl for those who yearn for landfall, a lamp for those who long for light. For those who need a resting place, may I be a bed. And for all those who need a servant, may I be their slave. May I be the wishing jewel, the vase of plenty, a word of power, and the supreme healing. May I be the tree of miracles, and for every being, may I be the abundant cow. Like if we were over here in our surrender. It's not a word Buddhists talk about too much. They're too rational and pragmatic. But we talk about surrender. If I'm over here, he's talking about all these things that's at the opposite end, and most of us will never go all the way over there. That'll be just enough, torque or whatever you call it to get us to a middle place. It'll just bring us, most of them, just to a middle place. There's very few that go all the way to the other side. I mean, everybody loves a martyr, but nobody really wants to be one. And on top of that, like once you martyred, that's it. You're done for. You can't be of any more use. Your goose is cooked. I was talking with someone, a dear sister in Thailand, And she's given everything. She's given her life to make it possible for the nuns there to, not just to ordain, but she, being a nun herself, has gone out for the last, I think, 15 years, and she works as the abbess of the nunnery. She works so that she can put all of her nuns through college. And so they don't respect her because she works. Because they're so busy thinking that some things are beneath them because they don't have the heart of a bodhisattva. But everyone who wanted to go, she put them through college. The college doesn't cost much there, So she could put, from her year's salary, she could put 3 or 4 of them through to get a master's degree because they needed education. Education at a certain level dispels ignorance and fear. It allows one to improve the understanding of the society. So it helps to make it a more equitable culture in a place where women aren't, not only are they not highly valued, that's everywhere, but at least there's some places where with education, you have a toehold in upward mobility. And it creates a voice for you to speak. So I remember when I would go there often, and we would, families would sell their children, their baby girls, for $100 to feed, the other children. They'd sell one. And, they have like the sex trade and everything. It's bad everywhere, but particularly, in Thailand. Wow, just thinking about it. And we would buy, we buy the babies. And then somebody came to us and said, don't do it. You have to stop doing it. As much as you want to do it, you have to stop, because it just continues to fuel the mentality and the trade. So as hard as it was for me, because $100, not much, could go with $10,000 and like do a lot of good, So we take them, we'll keep them in the monastery and we'll train them up, They said, no, you fuel the trade when you do that. And so we had to give them up. But the reason I bring her up is because she continues to fight for their freedom. And she's in a place right now that the soldiers have come. She's always having to run and relocate. She just gave up a beautiful monastery because she couldn't be protected. And so she moved to another place, and then just before there was a time that we had a nice event. I think it was just a month ago. Was it? Yeah, it was just a month ago. And when she ordains nuns, and I co-ordained with her an American, a U.S. Identification card. So they're not Thai, bhikkhunis. They are bhikkhunis of a Western order who happen to live in Thailand. And that's a legal distinction. But I told her I'm gonna stop. As a matter of fact, Buddha Master told me I could no longer do that. And I disagreed with him. But I tried to incline my ear to his wisdom to kind of understand and see where some of the harm and some of the fault is, you know. Because right now, soldiers have come to their new place, and they have two cooties right on the edge of the forest, and then there's a path. And there's 6 soldiers who have set up a camp right across from them. So when they got up to walk out and go for their morning walk, you know, the soldiers were like, "There they are, get them," you know. So she said, I stood my ground. I wrote her back. I said, you can't serve if you're dead. You know, so that's the thing about being a martyr. I said, you got hundreds of nuns there that you have to look out for. Standing your ground on a dirt road on the edge of the forest against 6 soldiers, that doesn't make sense. And she wrote me back last night. She said, okay, sister, we're preparing to move in the morning. It's not a defeat for them to have to get up and move, because the 2 of them are the guardians of all of those nuns. Now, if you want to take out the whole group, take out the head. That's all you got to do. But you know, I just say it because I have so much admiration for her, and she's never gotten any respect. She didn't do it for praise, and she doesn't get any because her nuns are lower in the society. They're not the doctors' daughters and the lawyers' daughters. So if you're gonna be associated with something, you're associated with something that props you up and makes you look good too, right? So there is a group of nuns there, but they're all part of the upper crust, and their story is told far and wide. But she has, I don't know, maybe 3 times as many nuns, but the story gets just quashed at every turn because there's no human pride there, you know what I mean? So these are ways also that we give ourselves, knowing the reason why we do, for no praise, for no gain, for no recognition. And what does that keep down in you? Bitterness, yeah. That's what uproots bitterness. When you feel like you haven't been acknowledged, haven't been appreciated. Whenever that seed of bitterness starts to rise, one knows, oh, you got work to do. That's how you know by what's rising up in your own mind. So this is a lot for us to meditate on, isn't it? Mm-hmm. He goes on and on with this, but he says, repeat these words daily in order to maintain your intention to help others without hesitation. And then our aspiration will grow, and it will grow, and we'll move from a bodhisattva aspiration to a Buddha aspiration. We will know that we truly can attain, that we truly can change, that we truly can have a heart of boundless compassion for others. We have confidence in ourselves, and we have confidence in the path because it moves us from a wrong view to a right view. And that view becomes our view. And we see the power and the joy in it. It says, just as all the Buddhas of the past embraced the awakened attitude of mind, and in the precepts of the Bodhisattva, step by step abode and trained, just so, for the benefit of beings, I will also have this attitude of mind. And in those precepts, step by step, I will abide and I will train. Okay, so we're in the first quarter of the book, So if you think like, whew, this is like really tough. We haven't even got, we just at the beginning of the book. But I'm gonna tell you, it actually gets easier. But the reason it gets easier is because we start with the truth of the matter, what it really takes. So nobody has any illusions. And we say, like, if taste it, taste and see that it's good. And then we go on to how to develop the discipline to be able to stand with this great wish, with this attitude. And then we find out, oh, well, in order for me to make this, I'm going to have to deal with some things in me. I'm going to have to deal with my fear. I'm going to have to deal with my anger. I'm going to have to deal with my worry. I'm going to have to deal with my sense of loss. And that's when we really start working with those things. When you don't have a need to, you don't. But this, our own aspiration gives us helps us to see how we lack. We don't change when we don't think we're lacking. But when we really recognize that we're lacking, then we can begin to change. And when that happens, then we have enthusiasm for the path. And now we are we've gone to the mountaintop. We're on the downside of this. So the biggest thing is just changing our mind. Just being willing to say, I will. That's where the hard part is. I promise you that the other side of the mountain is good. And whenever we think that we are not in a safe place, that we're not in a good place, because we have hidden this in our hearts, it rises up to defend us when we need it. So I think I'm going to stop right there. I just don't want you to have any illusions about what is the path, the way of the Bodhisattva. That's why they call it fierce. It's a warrior's path. Anything anybody want to say? Any questions? We're ready to close. Anybody online? Then thank you for coming. And thank you for waiting for us to get here. May you be well and happy and peaceful. May no harm come to you and no danger. May you always be able to meet inevitable difficulties of life. Yeah.